susunod na programa ay rated G. Ito ay pwede sa lahat ng manonood.
Hello everyone, good morning. Welcome to Mojo TV. I am Rubijin Brazil
And I am Sabrina Toriano, and we are your hosts for today. So this will be an amazing episode, Mari, as we will be talking about an assessment.
That's right, Hale. Knowing both your strengths and weaknesses will help you to improve yourself, especially for teachers and students. As for the teachers, assessing their students will help them to create or develop interventions that are suited for their learners.
On the other hand, for students, assessments motivates them in their learning process, and for the reason that they are able to show their knowledge and skills at the same time. So for this episode, our viewers at the end of the show, take note that at the end of the show, our viewers are also expected to, number one, understand the importance of having assessment in the teaching and learning process, and number two, distinguish interventions, method, and tools in assessment.
To deepen our understanding about assessment, we are lucky enough that they are able to give us the time amidst their busy schedule.
Please welcome our lovely guests from the Mojo ladies, Bisanya, Gunaon, and Vasquez.
Hi ladies!
Hi everyone.
Good morning!
Good morning. Thank you.
So, are you all future educators?
Yes, we are.
I mentioned earlier about the importance of assessment both for the teachers and for the students. So, Ms. Bisaya, can I ask you, for you, what is the importance of assessment in learning?
Well, the importance of assessment in learning goes back to the difference of assessment of learning, assessment for learning. The main difference is that you use assessment to diagnose what is lacking in student learning. You use assessment to see if they're following during your lesson by asking some questions about follow up on the lessons that you are discussing in class. And then, of course, to use it as a basis for grades, which will also be very crucial in determining their future grades.
Very well said, Ms. Bisaya. So, how about you, Ms. Gunaon? Upon taking assessment in learning, what have you realized?
After taking assessment in learning, I come to realize the importance of preparation and thorough understanding of concepts.
Wow, that was an amazing realization. And I bet our viewers for today are also reflecting on our topic. And by the way, I heard that you are currently working on a new portfolio. Would you mind telling us something about it?
Yes, ePortfolio is a collection of artifacts in an electronic format, and it is designed to have multimedia evidences for learners' achievements. Also, it helps us to gain new information and experiences.
Wow, that is really amazing. And through that portfolio, you are also able to show your progress on throughout. And I'm starting to love this conversation, but stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back.
And we are back. Mara, as a student, you have been through a lot of assessments, right? And as a future educator, are you willing to give your students an assessment?
Yes, of course. I would love to give them assessment for them to know their progress in terms of their academic growth.
Precisely. So to deepen our understanding, I am giving you the chance to impart us more knowledge about assessments and its integral part on teaching.
The first chapter of Assessment in Learning 2 talks about the assessment as an integral part of teaching. So this chapter presented 5 learning outcomes that are expected to students at the end of this chapter. The first one is to differentiate among diagnostic, formative, and summative assessment. Next, we have side ways to do traditional and authentic assessment. Third, we have distinguish between authentic assessment and traditional assessment, norm reference and criterion reference assessment, decontextualized and contextualized assessment. The fourth learning outcome is to explain the marks of quality assessment, and of course, last we have to discuss the current trends in assessment. Now, to give you a little bit of throwback and a little bit of context about chapter 1, the main focus or the main highlight of this chapter is how important having an assessment in the teaching and learning process. So this can be done through diagnostic, formative, and summative assessment, and it can also either be authentic or traditional, norm reference or criterion reference, and contextualized or decontextualized. Either way, I am pretty sure that having assessment in the teaching and learning process can create a bigger and better impact on the students' academic progress. As part of an assessment, we already had our collaborative activity when we had our discussion personally. And it is quite long, but the main purpose of having that collaborative activity is for us to know up to what extent do we acquire the knowledge in this discussion. And also, as part of an assessment, we have this activity called Check Your Understanding for us to know if we are able to grasp the information and the knowledge presented in this chapter. And as a result, we have here the summary of our answers for each and every items. And it shows that
For item number 1, 73% answered A, learner's readiness for the lesson. For item number 2, 91% answered B, formative assessment. For the third item, 54% answered D, formative and summative assessment. However, letter C is the correct answer. Item number 4, 64% answered A. Diagnostic and formative assessments, when done well, lead to favorable summative assessment results. For item number 5, 45% answered A. Simple recall test. For item number 6, 82% answered B. Formulate a test item that is aligned with this learning outcome. Design an experiment to determine the effect of detergent on plant. For item number 7, 64% answered C. Contextualized assessment. And for item number 8, 73% answered B. Norm reference assessment. Now, for item number 9, 55% answered B. Teacher sharing scoring rubric with students only during summative assessment. Down to the second to the last item, 83% answered A, which includes the item from 1, 2, and 3. And last, 73% answered B, no, she isn't.
this chapter is very informative, and I would say that I was able to fill my mind with substantial information, and it is my pleasure to share to all of you my key takeaways in this chapter. Well, the difference of diagnostic assessment to formative assessment and summative assessment is that diagnostic assessment happens before the instruction or before the teaching and learning process to know the student's prior knowledge about the subject matter, while the formative assessment happens during the instruction, meaning it happens while having the discussion or the teaching and learning process to know if the students are able to grasp the information and the knowledge. On the other hand, the summative assessment takes place after the teaching and learning process, and it is also considered as the basis of grading. Well, I have a lot to share, but the main point of all of that is having an assessment in teaching and learning process gives the students an opportunity to know their strengths and weaknesses. It also helps students to have a meaningful and productive teaching and learning process, which could lead them to reach their opening. I'm going to end my sharing with this realization that subjecting ourselves into an assessment is a really good idea. We must welcome assessment, not just in terms of academic, but also with all the things that we do, because I believe that it is an avenue for us to know where we excel and in what aspects we need to double our efforts. And a piece of advice to everyone, please don't be afraid to be assessed and receive criticisms, because by having an assessment, we can be able right away what are the things that we need to improve and be consistent about.
Wow, that is a very detailed discussion, Alex. In connection with our topic, which is assessment, I am curious about the OPT or the outcome-based education. So, to enlighten us more about OPT, here's the topic.
So thank you, Ruby. So at this juncture, we will be having a recap about the chapter 2, which is entitled the outcome-based assessment and assessment, wherein the learning objectives are at the end of this chapter. The students are able to explain the essence of OBE and OBTL, compare the understanding by design, OBE and OBTL, and lastly, explain the meaning of constructive alignment in the context of a constitutional cycle. So throughout the lesson, we are able to view that outcome-based assessment is a set to attain the desired outcomes, also means that it is a student-centered during instructions. So Spady espouses that transformational OBE, also referred to as deferred outcomes, where it compromises the knowledge, understanding, skills, and attitudes that we should acquire. So PIC's version of outcome-based teaching and learning define outcomes as learning outcomes which is more specific than institutional outcomes, program outcomes, and course outcomes. So Spady cited that there are four principles of OBE: the clarity of focus, designing down, high expectations, and expanding opportunities. Moreover, Wiggins and McKnight's understanding by design have also three stages: the identify desired results, determining acceptable evidence, and plan learning experience and instruction. So at this point, our teacher asked us to answer some questions that are related to the topic which deepen our understanding to outcome-based learning and outcome-based teaching and learning. So this activity also gives clarification to the connection of OBE and OBTL. Now, let's move on to check for understanding. Number 1, do OBE, OBTL, and UBD observe the principle begin in the end of the mind? So 46 in our group answered A, no. 2, with which does the teacher start his or her lesson if he or she teaches in accordance with OBE? So 82% answered letter A. For number 3, which statements are true? 64% answered A, 1 and 2. Number 4, with which outcome is OBE's PD version concerned? So 70% answered B, different outcomes. Number 5, based on Biggs and Tang's OBE version, which outcomes are most broad? So 100% answered letter C, which is institutional outcomes. For number 6, based on Biggs and Tang's OBE version, which outcomes are more specific? So 46% answered letter D, learning outcomes. For number 7, what are the 4 principles of OBE cited by Spady? So 55% answered letter D, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So number 8, what is the proof of constructive alignment? So 70% answered C. Number 9, why does understanding by design go with OBE according to UBD? And 100% answered letter A, the first step of the instructional process is identifying and clarifying learning outcomes. For number 10, which is the first step in the instructional cycle? So 82% answered letter D, the setting instructional objectives. For number 11, in OBE, which determine the what, how of instruction? So 46% answered letter B, which is the learning outcomes. My key takeaways is that OBE and OBTL are the process of instruction begins with clarifications of learning outcomes, and the learning outcomes determine the context of teaching and learning activities. At this point, our teacher asked us to have a research, and also my findings regarding the implementation of OBE is that it was dropped due to some reason that in US it is termed Standard Approach to Curriculum cited by Shaker and Mano in 1994. All of all, for our quotation, content without purpose is only trivia by Steve Rivington reminds us of future educators where we should know our sole purpose for us to deal with our progress, where we can share our knowledge, skills, and attitudes to the learners. In doing so, we can be a better educator someday.
That's interesting, right? So, thank you, Mr. Comfort, for sharing us about OBE and theory methods. So, talking about assessment, do you think learning outcomes and teaching objectives are different?
Yes, we are different. Chapter 3, which is entitled Learning Outcomes, Sources, and Characteristics. Here is the learning outcomes of the chapter 3. At the end of the chapter, the student should be able to explain the meaning of learning outcomes, state the sources of learning outcomes, explain why learning outcomes must consider needs of industry, explain the characteristics of good learning outcomes, and determine whether a given learning outcome is good or not, and improve on learning outcomes that do not meet standards. And the summary of the chapter 3. Learning outcomes describe what learners should know, be able to do, and value as a result of integrating knowledge, skills, and attitudes learned throughout the course. They are stated in measurable terms. This resource is designed to help you write and use learning outcomes as you design in teach courses. It includes relevant definitions and characteristics and benefits of learning outcomes.
those who are creating a new course, developing a course, or teaching a course that was designed by someone. And for the collaborate, the summary of my answer is that the Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers define teacher quality in the Philippines. The standards describe the expectations of teachers, increasing levels of knowledge, practice, and professional engagement. These standards reflect interdependent, domain, qualities, and values of teachers, work that are integral to student success. There can be different standards for different career stage in the profession and its various domains. To define the characteristics of teachers at each career stage. Here is the summary of the CFU, or check for understanding. Number 1, which is true of learning outcomes. 91% of the English major answer A, which is what learners are expected to demonstrate at the end of a lesson. Number 2, which are sources of learning outcomes. 64% of the English major answer D, which is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Number 3, why should educational institutions consider needs of industry in the formulation of learning outcomes? 82% of the English major answer A, to prepare graduates for the world of work. Number 4, which does not apply to good learning outcomes. 82% of the English major answer A, which is state and how teachers must teach. Number 5, read this learning outcome. To demonstrate how to read a poem. Is this a good learning outcome? English major, 55% answer A. Yes, it is stated in behavioral terms. Number 6, which is an improved version of this learning outcome? To understand inductive lesson development. 64% of the English major answer B. To write a lesson plan following the inductive method. Number 7, which is behavioral term that is used in the formulation of a learning outcome? 64% of the English major answer A, which is to understand. Number 8, which are formulated from the learner's point of view. The English major 100% answers A, which is learning outcomes. And Mactai and Wiggins, understanding by design, which is highest in the level of understanding. 37% of English major answer B, aware of what they do not understand. Number 10, and Mactai and Wiggins, understanding by design, which is highest in the level of understanding. 36% of English major answer C, use knowledge in new situation. And lastly, number 11, if you align your learning outcome with the vision statement of DepEd, which will you most likely formulate? 37% of English major answer A, compose an essay describing the Philippines as part of the Orient Sea. Here's the key takeaways of the chapter 3. Learning outcomes describe the measurable skills, abilities, knowledge, or values that students should be able to demonstrate as a result of completing a course. They are student-centered rather than teacher-centered. In that they describe what the students will do, not what the instructor will teach. And for the summary of the research, this is important because it affects the way we demonstrate these abilities as things we perform. The Anderson taxonomy introduces the idea of creativity and puts it at the very top, the highest form of learning. There is some relatively minor shuffling of taxonomic levels. The 6 phases of understanding are the ability to explain, to interpret, to apply, to have perspective, to empathize, and to have self-knowledge. Wiggins and Mactai argue that teaching or transfer complete and mature understanding ideally involves the full development of all 6 kinds of understanding. And for the summary of the reflection, one of the most crucial aspects in developing a successful program is crafting the school's vision and mission statements. When executed properly, they provide a school with clarity and focus. A school that struggles to establish priorities and has a hazy vision or mission may both be caused by persistent disagreements.
Indeed, thank you, Isarno. So, we have a lot of statements to do, but of course, hindi ako magpapala. We will be having a short recap about Chapter 4 entitled Authentic Assessment, Meaning, Methods, and Tools. Last March 1, 2023, we already discussed this chapter, and the learning outcomes are, at the end of this chapter, the student should be able to first, explain the meaning of authentic assessment and non-trans assessment. Second, give examples of transversal competencies. Third, state the 21st century skills based on the P21 framework. Fourth, describe the features of the authentic assessment and 21st century assessment. And lastly, discuss the complementary relationship of authentic and traditional assessment. Through the discussion, we are able to widen our knowledge and deepen our understanding about authentic assessment, wherein it is a form of assessment that gives the students the opportunity to perform their skills or abilities that will hold themselves and prepare them in the real world task. In addition, authentic assessment is also called as performance assessment, direct assessment, and alternative assessment, which is also associated with non-test assessment. Non-test assessment measure the ability directly with the real task. For instance, we have the portfolio, journal, debates, and etc. During our face-to-face classes, we are assigned to define the primary purpose of non-test assessment. And for us, the primary purpose of non-test assessment is to provide the educators a comprehensive understanding about the strengths, weaknesses, learning styles, and the needs of the students. Thus, our group concluded that teachers' observation, games, and panel discussion are the effective tools for differentiated assessment. In this chapter, my takeaways are authentic assessment complement traditional assessment because the learners cannot necessarily perform real-world tasks if they do not master both the basic knowledge and skills. In connection with that, authentic assessment includes assessing the transversal competencies which are needed in the 21st century. We also learned that authentic assessment can be in the form of process-oriented, which is focused to the procedural knowledge, and product-oriented, which is focused to a concrete product. Furthermore, the acronym GRASP stands for Goal, Role, Objects, Product, Situation, Standards, and Criteria.
Let's come now to the check for understanding in this chapter. For the number 1 question, which statement on assessment is correct? 71% of the Mucho ladies answered letter A. Authentic assessment is synonymous to performance assessment. Number 2. Which statement is false? 100% answered letter B. Authentic assessment, because it is performance-based, does not need to be complemented by traditional assessment. Number 3. Which learning competency can be measured by traditional assessment? 55% answered letter A. Enumerate at least 5 traits of a person with a growth mindset. Number 4. Which learning competency is most appropriate for traditional assessment? 64% answered letter D. Distinguish between hypotonic and hypertonic solution. Number 5. Which is a product-based assessment? 64% answered letter A. A PowerPoint presentation. Number 6. Which is an example of process-based assessment? 82% answered letter A. Cleaning tools after used. Number 7. Which assessment task measures one of the learning outcomes of this chapter? Explain what authentic assessment is. 64% answered letter A. What is authentic assessment? Explain in not more than 2 sentences. For the number 8 question, which assessment task measure one of the learning outcomes of this chapter? Explain the complementary relationship of authentic and traditional assessment. 100% answered letter D. What does the complementary relationship between traditional and authentic assessment mean? Explain in not more than 3 sentences. Number 9. Teachers who teach physical education or PE cannot use traditional assessment because of the nature of their subject. Do you agree? 55% answered letter D. Teacher can use both traditional assessment for basic concepts and authentic assessment for performance. For the number 10 question, which statement on assessment is correct? 64% answered letter D. Paper and pencil tests complement product-based and process-based performance assessment. Number 11. Mr. Edel, a grade 5 teacher, discovers that one of his pupils can creatively draw. Which non-test activity will Mr. Edel employ to assess the pupil's creativity? 91% answered letter A. Cartooning. Number 12. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many classes are conducted virtually. Which type of non-test assessment below is most convenient to use? 55% answered letter B. Study guides. And for the last question,
What is true of the acronym GRASP? 91% answered letter A. It is one way of assessing learning in an authentic
In
setting.
conclusion, I have been subjected to both authentic assessment and traditional assessment, which I am grateful of because it honed me to be a better student and enriches both my knowledge and skills. And as a future educator, I will repeat my assessment experiences to my students for the reason that it will enriches both their knowledge and skills as well. The statement by Andy Hargreaves that talks about assessment, that we should measure what we value instead of valuing what we measure, is a statement that I could agree. I believe that measuring what we value paves the way towards a brighter future that awaits us. Because we are able to surpass the challenges and we are able to solve the importance of our value, especially when it comes to the teaching and learning process.
And now to join us again, we have Miss Listen. Hi. So, for you, Miss Listen, do you think it is important for teachers to develop a scoring rubric?
Very important because it is a way of giving a fair judgment and fair assessment of all the creativity of your students.
Chapter 5 tackles the development of a scoring rubric. And at the end of the lesson, students were expected to be able to explain what a scoring rubric is, cite the different parts of a scoring rubric, differentiate between holistic, analytic, task-based, and general scoring rubric, give the importance of a scoring rubric, distinguish between the difference of a scoring rubric, a checklist, and a rating scheme, and construct a holistic or an analytic rubric based on given learning outcomes. Now, what is a scoring rubric? A scoring rubric is simply an assessment tool to assess an authentic performance, such as a product or a performance. Now, you might have seen a scoring rubric in the form of a matrix or a table with criteria and different descriptors at the other side of it with different scores for each description. That was often used for role plays, portfolios, and other products or performance-based assessment. Now, I have mentioned the different parts of a scoring rubric, which is the criteria and descriptors. Let's be a little bit more specific. What is a criteria and what is a descriptor? So, a criteria is different aspects that will be judged in an authentic assessment. For example, if you were going to write an essay and the scoring rubric is about writing an essay, the criteria part will probably include things like spelling and grammar, organization of thoughts, concepts and ideas included. And then the descriptions will include, for example, in the spelling part, 10 to 15 spelling mistakes, 1 point. 5 to 9 spelling mistakes, 2 points. 0 to 4 spelling mistakes, 3 points. So a scoring rubric looks something like that. But that is more specific to the analytic type of scoring rubric. So we come to the different types of scoring rubrics. I have mentioned analytic, which includes different specific criteria and their descriptors. Now, a holistic type of scoring rubric is a little bit more, holistic. It's a little bit more general and the criteria are not really specific and more of merged with each other. For example, if you were going to make a holistic rubric for the essay that I gave an example for, the descriptions would probably look like spelling and grammar mistakes are less frequent, the organization of the essay concepts are impeccable, and the ideas presented are coherent to the topic, 5 points. And then, as the descriptions get a little bit maybe worse, that is when the scores become lower. That is what a holistic rubric looks like. Now, we come to the difference between a task-based rubric and a general type of rubric. When we say a general task rubric, it means that the rubric that you made is applicable to different types of tasks. And when we say specific task or task-based rubric, well, it says in the name itself that it's task-based, and it is very specific for a specific task. So if you're going to make a task-based specific or task-specific rubric for an essay, you cannot use it to assess a poster or a portrait or a drawing or a role play. But if it is a general type of rubric, you can use it in assessing different types as long as they are almost similar. For example, one of the descriptors could be the output is neat. So it could be that the essay is neat, the poster is neat, anything that is neat. So that is the general type of rubric. Now, what is the importance of a scoring rubric? There are three importances in making a scoring rubric. First, it helps students learn. Second, it helps teachers teach. And third, it helps coordinate between the instruction and the assessment according to Group Part 2015. So, how exactly does a scoring rubric help students learn? Well, if they are going to have a low score and they look at their scoring rubric, they would see in which specific area did they make a mistake, especially in analytic rubrics. For example, if they scored low and specifically in the spelling for the essay example, if they scored low on the spelling and they scored high in all the different aspects, then that means that they only need to work on their spelling and grammar, and that helps them learn. Now, for teaching, if we come back to chapter 1 of assessment, we learn about OBE and how OBE requires that we plan first our assessment and our learning outcomes before we actually plan the whole instruction. So if we plan an assessment, it is also crucial that we have an authentic assessment rubric with it, so that we will plan around it for the whole instruction. And so if we have a specific criteria set, we will work around that so that the output or the focus of the students and the teaching would be more on ultimately achieving the goals or the criteria set in the scoring rubric. And then the rubrics that help coordinate instruction and assessment, well, it is more connected to the first and the second importance, which is on the learning and the teaching. Of course, if you have planned the teaching well, the students will learn well and they will be able to achieve what is stated in the scoring rubric. Now, there are two other assessment tools for authentic assessment, which are rating scales and checklists. Now, this can be very helpful, especially in observation and self-assessment, or even in peer assessment. It's very easy to distinguish between the scoring rubric, the checklist, and the rating scales, because the scoring rubric has criteria and different descriptions that have different scores for each criteria. Checklists is very easy because it is just a list of characteristics that has a blank or a space or a box before it, and you just have to check if the item is present or not. And the rating scale has different characteristics listed as well, but they are rated with how frequent they are observed or to what degree they are observed on the student or the output or the performance.
Now here's the result for check for understanding. For item number 1, 55% answered B. It is used to score a product or a process against established criteria. For item number 2, 46% answered C, which includes the item 1 and 2. For item number 3, 46% answered A, however, the correct answer is C, holistic rubric. For the fourth item, 82% answered B, general rubric. For the fifth item, 46% answered D. Letter D includes the item 1, 2, and 3. Now down to our last item, 87% answered C. Checklists and rating scales are not scoring rubrics.
Now, to reflect from this lesson that we have, as a future teacher, I resolve to always and constantly be thinking about creating an authentic scoring rubric for an authentic assessment, because it gives us a little bit more objectivity to judgment that is otherwise very subjective. Because how would you rate a very complex output such as a dance performance or an essay or a scrapbook or a portfolio that is a combination of all the creativity of students that includes their learnings in the subject or the lesson, and it becomes really more objective and fairer
for everyone if we have a set of criteria to look at every time that we're going to judge their work. And it also makes sure that no aspect of their performance or their product is overlooked. Because if we're going to have a different set of traits in mind or a different idea of what good looks like for each product or each performance, then there would be no consistency in our judgment. And so the scoring of each of the assessment of the students or the different groups of students becomes unfair. And so as a future teacher, we want to avoid being unfair, and we want to make all students feel that their performance is valid and fairly judged and scored and assessed. So we will not be lazy in doing the authentic assessments, and we will always be fair in doing these authentic assessments by using tools such as scoring rubrics, checklists, and grades.
This conversation is getting more interesting, and now to discuss another interesting topic, we have Miss Gwen.
Yes, Ms. Andrin, last March 8, 2023, Kuya Michael and Adrian are the assigned reporter to discuss the Chapter 6 entitled Portfolio Assessment. And today, we will be having a short epitome on this chapter, where the learning outcomes are, at the end of the chapter, the student should be able to explain what portfolio assessment is. Next is state the elements of a portfolio and then distinguish among the types of portfolio. And lastly, discuss how to use portfolios effectively. So throughout the discussion, we gained knowledge and understanding of the portfolio assessment, one of the authentic and unconventional assessment methods used in education. This is being used in response to the increased demand for more authentic ways to assess students' academic improvement and development. A student's portfolio display their cumulative learning and efforts over time. They provide insightful information on student development and skill mastery. The data, along with the student reflection, offers insightful details about how each student learned and what matters to him or her during the learning process. So in portfolio, it includes different types of work, such as writing samples, journal entries, self-assessment, and etc. And also there are 3 types of portfolio, and each type has a distinct function. First is assessment portfolio, that the primary function of an assessment portfolio is to evidence what a student has learned and achieved against the intended learning outcomes, depending on how the portfolio is originally defined. This may be all of the work in progress portfolio. Next is the developmental or growth portfolio, that emphasizes the process of learning. And lastly, the display or best work or showcase portfolio, that emphasizes the products of learning. Navarro et al. 2013 cites that there are essential elements of a portfolio, and these are cover letter. They will have content entries, date on all entries, draft or oral and written product. And lastly, the reflections. The best practice you must be observed for portfolio to use effectively. One of these is identifying learning outcomes to assess through portfolio. Next is introducing the idea of portfolio assessing to your class. Next is the development of portfolio, and etc. After this discussion, we answered the collaborate activity that measure our learnings in the lesson. The quote by Dr. Helen Barrett, testing gives you a snapshot, portfolios give you a movie. I believe it demonstrates that testing gives learners a chance to study, for instance, in incoming examination. Similar to when we take a picture, we get ready first, choose the best pose, and then snap the picture when we are ready. And portfolio give you a movie. This indicates that the portfolio is a collection of the students' work and serve as proof of how they learn. Similar to in the film we watch and can tell what the characters are doing and feeling. The learners understand how their learning progress match the aim by completing this portfolio, and they take ownership of their own learnings and efforts. I also gave the acronym of the essence of the portfolio, and this is what I construct. Portfolio gives us opportunity to be reflective and to use this as a reference for future, and it takes more ownership and responsibility to capture the learning progress of impressive work of the learners. And the next, giving the importance and another meaning of the portfolios. Assessment portfolio is like a work of art. Showcase or best case or display portfolio is a representation of students' highest quality of work. Development or growth portfolio is demonstrate the learner's progression and growth throughout time. Next in this phrase, the magic of portfolios lies not in the portfolios themselves, but in the process used in creating them and the school culture in which documented learning is valued. For me, this phrase indicates that we as a students, our effort goes beyond simply building a portfolio to satisfy the academic requirements and also includes applying what we have learned to every topic being covered. Our ingenuity in learnings demonstrate how well we have absorbed and appreciated our education. So I have here, as you can see on the screen, my self-made rubrics for evaluating a student teaching portfolio with these following elements: cover letter, table of contents, introduction, entries, reflections, summative statements, and appendices. So, for instance, in cover letter, 25 points, truly meet standard. Audience and purpose of the cover letter are strong and clear. Format of the letter is clear and sentence are varied. For 15 points, approaching standard. Audience and purpose of the cover letter are present but could be stronger. Format of the letter is mostly clear and some sentences are unclear, uneven, or contain errors. For 10 points, not yet approaching standard. Audience and purpose of the cover letter are not clear. Format is hard to see and most sentences contains numerous errors and cannot be understood. And then, the table of contents, introduction, entries, reflections, summative statements, and the appendices, you can take a screenshot for this for you to have a reference book. So now, let us move to check for understanding. Number 1 question, many suggest that for teacher candidates to be licensed, they should be subjected to both written test and performance assessment. Which of the following is the best performance assessment that teacher candidates must be subjected to? 70% answered letter A, which is demonstration teaching. Number 2, Ken is working on his portfolio for an essay writing class. Included in Ken's portfolio in his teacher's evaluation notes on his essay that won first prize in the DepEd National Essay Writing Contest. These notes are examples of which of the following? 73% answered letter C, which is the attestation. Number 3 question, is a student totally free in the choice of what to include in the assessment portfolio? 18% answered letter C, which is it depends on the kind of portfolio. In number 4, which is true of portfolio assessment? 82% answered letter A, which is it is an authentic form of assessment. And lastly, number 5, which adjectives apply to portfolio as a form of collection? 64% answered letter A, 2, 3, and 4, which is systematic, organized, and purposeful. My key takeaways in this lesson is that the assessment portfolio used to assess the performance of the learners, also to document student learning on specific curriculum outcomes. The items in the portfolio should be designed to elicit the knowledge and skill specified in the outcomes. In research activity, we need to know and search the disadvantage or drawbacks of the portfolio, and upon my researching, if the portfolio is not rated at various stages throughout the portfolio formation, one major drawback of a portfolio assessment is that it can take a lot of time to review the complete portfolio. Another drawback of portfolio assessments is that even when the portfolios are in electronic form, they must be organized well in order to be stored, accessed, and assessed without becoming intractable. And the last activity that gave us with this chapter on portfolio assessment, to be on point, I realized that the portfolio is one of the most useful tools for teachers to employ when assessing the learning progress and accomplishment of their students.
Thank you, Ms. Breno. And now joining us is Ms. Remilio. Hi! So, Ms. Michelle, my question to you is, what is an e-portfolio? The e-portfolio or electronic portfolio is a used formal settings where students must apply their knowledge on how the web works as they convey their message.
Chapter 7. E-portfolio as an assessment tool and as a communication medium. Learning outcomes. At the end of this chapter, you were expected to: number 1, explain what an e-portfolio is. Number 2, discuss the learning theory that supports the use of e-portfolio. 3, distinguish among the types of an e-portfolio. And the last, number 4, discuss how to use an e-portfolio effectively. Learners must focus on their collective work, think about how it will be portrayed and what the work says about them as an individual learner. Learners also reflect on what they have learned and how they plan to build and improve themselves. An e-portfolio is a digital collection of course-related work like essays, posters, photographs, videos, and artworks created by students. There are types of e-portfolio: the assessment e-portfolio, learning e-portfolio, and career transfer e-portfolio. And these are my key takeaways in this chapter. An e-portfolio is a digital collection of course-related work and other aspects of the student's life, such as co-curricular and extracurricular activities. To ensure that e-portfolio are used most effectively, explain the benefits of the use of e-portfolio to students, establish clear expectations, and scaffold student learning. Let's come now to check for understanding in Chapter 7. Number 1, Alan is proud and satisfied with his co-curricular and extracurricular accomplishments. He included this in his e-portfolio. If you were his teacher, which best practice should you employ to sustain this practice and encourage his classmates to do the same? 46% of the Murchuladis answered letter A. Explain the benefits of e-portfolios to students. Number 2, with the uses of e-portfolios in mind, which does not belong? 91% of the Murchuladis answered letter B, to encourage independent learning. Number 3, which is not true of an e-portfolio? 91% of the Murchuladis answered letter A. It is traditional form of assessment since it has been practiced ever since. Number 4, which challenge do e-portfolios pose for students? 82% of the ladies answered letter A. They are time consuming. Number 5, which corresponds to career transfer e-portfolios? 91% of the ladies answered letter A, showcase portfolio. And the research. These are the examples of e-learning portfolio, the career transfer e-portfolio wherein the learning are where the audience is students themselves, and the career transfer e-learning where the audience is extended. And for the reflection, your portfolio would likely include a summary of your teaching experience. Teaching portfolios detail exactly what you thought and methods of instructions you've used.
Thank you, Ms. Rubilio. And now to talk about the assessment in effective domain, we have with us Ms. San Juan. Hi! So, my question is, San Juan, what is for you the effective domain?
So in the affective domain, we should not only pay attention to the mind and the hand of the student, we should also give or focus to the development of their heart. Assessment in the affective domain. At the end of this chapter, the student should be able to explain the meaning of assessing learning outcomes in affective domain, discuss soft skills in relation to assessment in the affective domain, cite the methods and tools for learning in the affective domain, and develop assessment tools to measure learning in the affective domain. Chapter 8 tackles about assessment in the affective domain. Wherein, in Bloom's taxonomy, there are 3 domains of learning: the cognitive, psychomotor, and affective domain. Where these 3 domains of learning are ASA, meaning knowledge, skills, and attitude. In this this chapter, we shall be concerned with the affective domain because it can broaden our knowledge, especially we, the future educators. In other words, let us not only focus on the development of mind and hands, let us give importance and give attention to the development of the heart. In our previous discussion, the reporter explained that even we are brilliant but has a bad attitude, it's nonsense. Good character and good communication is the most important thing in teaching. Even you are good enough in delivering your lesson but has a bad attitude, our teaching will never good enough. Bible says, what does it profit man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul? Indeed, what does it profit man or woman if he or she accumulates a lot of wealth with the use of her or his mind and hands, if he or she not happy or has no sense of fulfillment? How a Thurstone scale differs from Likert scale? Unlike Likert scale, which only allow respondents to provide one answer per question, Thurstone scales allow them to give multiple answers by assigning each item in the recipe school. So in my research, unlike Likert scale, which only allow respondents to provide one answer per question, Thurstone scale allow them to give multiple answers by assigning each item on the list of his score. These allow researchers to get more detailed results from their surveys. Semantic differential from bipolar adjective scale. Semantic differential is a type of rating scale used to measure the connotative meaning of concept on a series of graduated scales. It is typically based on a 7-point rating scale which features two contrasting adjectives, one at each end of the scale. The method is simple to set up and it offers rewards in data confidence. While bipolar adjective scale is a specific type of rating scale characterized by a continuum between two opposite endpoints. The bipolar scale has the advantage that it measures both the direction, side of the scale, and intensity, the distance on the center of the respondent's position on the concept of interest. On assessment, measure what you value instead of valuing only what you can measure. Precisely true. You need to do everything. Don't focus only on what you measure. We should know what's the best and give value to the best that we can do. Because valuing is important, especially in teaching. Let us now go to the check for understanding. Number 1. In which assessment tool for affect is the respondents asked to put a check or X to determine the presence or absence of a trait? 64% of our group answered letter B. Number 2. Which can enhance the accuracy of information gathered by the way of observation? 46 answered letter A. Number 3. If you want to assess students' reaction to concept in terms of bipolar scales defined with contrasting adjectives at each end, which will you use? 45% of our group answered letter B. Number 4. Referring to soft skills, which belongs to academic soft skills. 64 answered by our group answered letter A. Number 5. To which group of soft skills do controlling temper, compromising with others to avoid conflict, responds appropriately to others to love? 82% answered letter C. In this chapter, my takeaways is that learning in the affective domain is very important. We do with the development of values and attitudes of the students. The affective domain focuses on emotional growth, developing attitudes, emotions, and feelings. Children are constantly receiving new information and the teachers encourage children to actively participate in the activities provided. From this chapter, I realized that assessment helped the students understand their errors, understand the feedback received on their errors, and help them improve. Assessment may also provide another opportunity to assimilate the new information and redo the exam to improve performance. Assessment in education plays a vital role that can check or determine the student's learning and understanding. It helps the student progress, roadblocks, and obstacles. It can further give an insight into the reason why students face the problems they face and can help bridge the gap between content retention and better student performance. I learned also that there are 3 domains of learning that will improve each of the students to become the best that they can do. By this chapter, affective domain is very important. It includes factors such as student motivation, attitudes, perception, and values.
Thank you, Miss everyone. That's interesting. And in the first topic, you shared a glimpse about formative assessment. And right now, here with Miss Vasquez. Again, Miss Vasquez. So she will give us the techniques or the games that can be used by the teachers during the discussion. So this will really help the teachers, and most especially, this will help us future educators. Right, Miss Vasquez?
Yes, appropriate techniques can make teaching and learning more effective. At this chapter, let us recapitulate the chapter 9 entitled Formative Assessment. At this chapter, we focus on the following learning outcomes, such as at the end of the chapter, the student should be able to cite appropriate techniques and tools for formative assessment. Second, use appropriate techniques and tools for formative assessment. Third is explain how scoring rubrics can facilitate formative assessment. And lastly, reason why self-assessment is an important feature of formative assessment. In the discussion we had last April 26, 2023, we understand what is formative assessment, which is this is the assessment that occurs during the instructions to ensure the learning of the students. More so, to make formative assessment more effective, the teacher used several techniques and tools to support the assessments. And also, be enlightened about the importance of self-assessment because the students become the agent of their own learning. To further understand this chapter, we dig deeper to collaborate activity and we explore the following questions. Number 1, in what sense is formative assessment compared to tasting the soup while summative assessment is serving the soup? To simply explain this, when the cook or the teacher tastes the soup, that's formative assessment. When the customer or the students accept and make a final judgment about the quality of the soup, that's the summative assessment. The second question is, distinguish the formative and summative assessment by means of the metaphor that mentioned above. So, to distinguish the two assessments, the metaphor mentioned above is very helpful. But to further distinguish, here's another metaphor. The student's mind is a sponge. The teacher used it to wash dirty dishes. First question is, explain the following terms and relate them to the formative assessment. Explain how. So the first term is learner agency. It refers to the ownership of their learning. When the students believe that their action can make difference, they become more confident, engaged, and motivated to participate during the discussions. So, the second term is self-regulated learners, as students who decide their learning goals, self-evaluation performance against their goal, and self-improvement. So with this, according to Ian Clark 2013, self-regulation of cognitive and affective states support lifelong learning by enhancing motivational disposition to learn, enriching reasoning, refining metacognitive skills, and improvement. The last term is self-motivated learners, a student who has goal and willing to invest time and effort to achieve that goal. Therefore, they actively engage in the discussion because he or she has goals to be achieved.
So let's come now to check for understanding. Number 1, which refers to formative assessment. 73% of Mutualates answered letter A, assessment for learning. Second, can scoring rubrics help improve results in formative assessment? 55% of Mutualates answered letter A, yes. Loss, teacher passes charts among groups of 4 to 5 students to assess understanding. Teacher possesses an open-ended question. The group records an answer to an open-ended question, then passes it on to the next group. When every group has written its responses are discussed as a class. Which formative assessment technique is described? 73% of modulators answered letter D. It is round robin charts.
To give light to learning outcomes, here are my takeaways. So, formative assessment is the assessment assess the instructions, then followed by summative assessments. Then, the teachers use several techniques and tools to make sure that the formative assessments become more effective, such as round robin charts, questioning strategies, three-way summaries, take pair share, 3, 2, 1 countdown, 1 minute paper, exit and admit ticket, then creative extension project. Also, we talked about the scoring rubrics, which can facilitate formative assessment in the sense that rubrics can guide the students on the questions to be asked and things to perform. Before the chapter ends, we did the research about the other techniques for formative assessment considering the multiple intelligence. Multiple intelligence is a theory proposed by Howard Gardner. It wasn't over a year, but still, teachers find the best way to use it in a classroom to assess the students. So, the MI or multiple intelligence has 9 intelligence, such as linguistic, logical mathematical, spatial, bodily kinesthetic, musical, interpersonal, naturalist, and existential. Here's the other techniques for the students to engage in multiple intelligence, such as stir the bowl, finger plays, finding hidden objects, movement on the go, composition of song, my emotion and fun collecting, and sorting and painting. To balance learning styles and subject matter, a teacher should show the students on how to understand a subject which address their weak intelligence by applying their most developed intelligence. For instance, a student who has highly developed musical intelligence can be asked to learn about a war and what happened during that war by making a composition of song about it, according to Timor 2007. In conclusion, we reflect on the chapter, and as students, we've been given the opportunity for formative assessment. And we find ourselves as a plant growing by the water. The water refers to the feedback that our teacher gave us. Therefore, if there are a chance for formative assessment, we should not hesitate to grab the opportunity because it makes us a better students and individual by reflecting on it. Also, time will come and we will become a teacher. So as a future teacher, let us make formative assessment an integral part of teaching because even myself, I realize that formative assessment is really important for our own growth. Therefore, my future students also need it. Additionally, the purpose of it is about using the instructional process to respond to students' needs and provide effective and meaningful learning experiences. Thank you, Ms. Vasquez. And we come now to the discussion of reporting and reading with Ms. Manila. Hi! Ms. Manali, can you share to us what is the importance of grading and reporting?
Grading and reporting is so essential to us as a teacher, right? First, grading and reporting will allow us to be fair in the students, parents, and colleges. Last day, March 26, 2023, we learned about grading and reporting, and the learning outcomes are, at the end of the chapter, the student should be able to explain the functions of grading and reporting, distinguish between norm reference and criterion reference grading, compute grades in accordance with the current DepEd policy on grading system, and cite points to observe when reporting students' progress to both students and parents. Because of that discussion, we are able to understand and know about grading and reporting. We learned the function of grading and reporting systems like enhancing students' learning, second, reports to parents or guardians, and third, administrative and guidance uses. And also, we are able to use the components of grading system, which is standards for comparison, aspect of performance, and last, weighing different kinds of evidence. We learned also about the reminders when we have a parents and teachers conference in our near future. which we will use since you are an inspiring teacher to mold and teach the students as what we do and learn. As a future teacher, we thought to be better in the future. We mold and taught to mold and teach students. So, we must be fair in all things, in giving them grades and teaching them, even though some parents are going to parents and teachers' conference to see their children's report card. Let's come now and check for understanding. In outcome-based education, or OBE, competency-based teaching, the standard on which grades are based and interpreted is or are blank. 91% of the modulators answered letter D. Intended learning or course outcomes. Number 2. What is the basis of grading if we adopt norm-reference grading? 82% of the ladies answered letter A. Performance of others. Number 3. In the Devon grading system, which is given most weight, 82% answered letter A, the written tests. And number 4, what is the initial grade in math of this grade 5 pupils who has the following grades in written work, 80, performance task 78, quarter examination 78. Well, the ladies answered 45%, letter A, the 78. My key takeaways are we have the grades for purpose. First, administrative, which grades help determine class rank. Next, information done purpose, which grades can be used to communicate with parents and students and they meet the course outcome. Third, motivational purpose, which students are motivated to study in order to get high grades and avoid failing grades. Last, the guidance purpose, to help parents and students to choose appropriate courses or level of work of students. We have also the grading system following components. The grading comparison, compare grades to set of standards. Next, aspect of performance like written tests, products, and performance. Weighing different kinds of evidence. Compute grades according to depth and policy. So, in conclusion, as a future teacher, we must be fair in all things because we want to be a student. We learned it the hard way, so we must be tough. It will also help us to improve communication with parents, students, guidance counselor, other teachers, colleges, future employers, and any other who will meet us in future. This is just a stepping stone for us to learn more and knowledgeable to contribute our knowledge and to the students who will need a teacher someday. It is just the beginning for us to be better and to learn.
What a wonderful discussion, Ms. Lang. And through the discussion, we are able to know that grades are indeed important.
This episode will not be complete without our last discussant. We have still with us Ms. Gunawan.
Hi, Ms. Lang.
Now, Ms. Gunawan, can you tell us something about the last chapter in assessment of learning?
Okay, the chapter 11 focuses on reflective assessment, using learners' assessment data and other reflection aids.
The last chapter to be discussed is reflective practice using learners' assessment data. Learning outcomes. At the end of the chapter, the pre-service teacher PST can demonstrate reflective self-assessment using learner assessment data and other reflection aids for purposes of adjusting one's teaching practices and for purposes of growing in the professional, and explain how professional reflection and learning can be used to improve teaching practice. This chapter is focused on the assessment of our own teaching practice as a future teacher. The assessment of our own teaching practice will be discussed based on, first, learners' attainment data as revealed in test scores and non-test data, and second, your teaching performance as evaluated by the students, our peers, and our supervisors. For the collaborator, first, professional reflection and learning are essential components of improving teaching practice. Reflection allows teachers to evaluate their own performance, identify areas for improvement, and develop strategies to enhance their teaching skills. Learning provides teachers with new knowledge and skills to apply in the classroom. 2. The solution to this issue is to provide students with clear criteria for evaluating their teachers. This can include factors such as the teacher's knowledge of the subject matter, their ability to communicate effectively, their organization and preparation for class, and their responsiveness to student questions and concerns. For number three, the concrete example of how evaluation from students, peer, and supervisors help teachers assess their own teaching. For instance, teacher has just completed a lesson on fractions with their class. After the lesson, the teacher can gather feedback from their students by asking them to complete a short survey or provide verbal feedback on what they learned and what they found challenging. This feedback can help the teacher understand how well students understood the material and identify areas where they may need to provide additional support. For the CFU, in a study conducted by Jackson and Brugman 2009, economists found that peer learning among small groups of teachers was the most powerful predictor of improved achievement over time, which is a logical implication of this learning improvement. 36% of our answers is the letter C, supplant peer learning with classroom supervision by school head. 2. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. What does this statement imply as the most reliable proof of effective teaching? 77% of our answers is the letter D, students favorably relating to one another. The third is, which question is aligned with teachers' reflective self-assessment in relation to effective teaching? 82% of our answers is the letter A. Did I help my students attain the intended learning outcomes of the lesson? Fourth, other than students' good scores and performance, what are other proofs of effective teaching? 73% of our answers is the letter D. First is the positive student evaluation of teachers' teaching. Second, favorable peer group evaluation. And third, supervisors' encouraging comments. For the fifth, peer evaluators display positive approach and make constructive comments in working towards a goal. What work-related interaction of peer evaluators is described here? 73% of our answers is the letter E, which is the collaboration. The last one is to respond to data gathered from his or her own self-assessment, which guides the teacher in his or her continuous professional development. 70% of our answers is the letter B, which is the individual plan for professional development or IPPD. The key takeaways. First, reflective practice using learner assessment data helps educators make informed decisions to modify instruction, adjust curriculum, or provide additional resources to support student learning. Second, for continuing improvement, teachers must develop the habit of reflective teaching and assessment. Third, the most reliable proof of effective teaching and assessment practice is students' learning manifested in the attainment of learning outcomes as expressed in test scores and grades. In my research, teachers use daily lesson logs and electronic class records to facilitate systematic and organized lesson planning and delivery, as well as monitor student progress and identify problem areas. This personalized teaching can improve academic outcomes. Teachers can tailor their instruction to meet the individual needs of each student by keeping accurate records of student performance. This personalized teaching approach has the potential to improve academic outcomes. My reflection is reflective practice is essential for improving teaching skills and student learning outcomes. Because it involves analyzing learners' attainment and evaluation comments from learners, peers, and supervisors or school heads to gain insights into how teaching is perceived. To ensure that I'm engaging in reflective practice effectively, I will set aside time regularly to reflect on my teaching practices and student learning outcomes. During this time, I will analyze the data collected from learners' attainment data and evaluation comments, as well as reflect on my own experiences in the classroom.
Wow. Thank you, Ms. Gulawan. Pleasure.
In this episode, Mucho Ladies gives us a deeper understanding, realizations, and learnings.
This has been Sandrine Bogan Atoriano,
And I am Regina Gracia Nadam.